2021. Who would believe? Episode 35. We're back. I'm TV. He's Oscar D'Souza. We call him OD sometimes. This is your Property Avenue WA, your avenue to matters property in WA. The focus is on Western Australia. And of course, as we say, and as we've said in the past, we encourage you to ask questions. And the purpose of our existence is to try and discover the answers. We like to think that our knowledge and our experience will help you with that. And if you're buying, you're selling, you're developing, whatever the case may be, then that's what we're here for. So, OD, Happy New Year. Great to see you, bud.
Happy New Year to you, mate. And obviously I saw you only a couple of nights ago because you were so kind. Yourself and your lovely wife was kind enough to have my family around, and that was quite a seafood storm that you cooked up. But Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to anyone that's listening. And as it said in the role there that you're in that new starting advertisement that you created, I'm glad that you kept the song, by the way. But so far as the advertisement is concerned, yeah, may everyone have a healthy and prosperous real estate journey in 2021.
Yep, and the plan is tonight is we've got a few things that we want to discuss tonight, and we've had a bit of an agenda, and obviously a case of what's been going on. Would you believe we've only sort of had a rest for one show? We did a show prior to Christmas, the week of Christmas. We had a break between the Christmas New Year, and we're back again. But we'll obviously have a chat about what's been and what hasn't been over the Chrissy break. Certainly property hasn't slowed down from all observations. So things are sort of still very active here in WA. There's lots of other things going on, and there is the big C has been mentioned yet again in both categories, both when it comes to the vaccine and the new strain, and then of course China has been in the commentary, which is very interesting because my little friend here has been making mention of that the big C on several occasions over the recent weeks. So it is an interesting observation. We've also had a really fabulous to get these sort of questions, but we had a message sent to us during the day from a friend of mine, and in fact a follower of ours. And we'll try and answer that question. We'll get the expert here, Oscar, to respond to that with Paul. He's looking at a development, and he sort of wants to know some of the pitfalls and some of the pointers with regard to doing that and some of those options. So we'll certainly discuss that. There's a couple of very interesting articles I saw. There is an interesting stat that new houses, the houses sold across Perth in November was the fastest rate since 2006. And I question the fact of, we have that situation about fear of missing out, the FOMO as we call it. Is that starting to come into play as well? The forecast with regard to investors are going to be definitely out and about in 2021. That's the feel. So we'll talk to OD about that. And the housing stock, is there going to be a lack of, particularly with the moratorium come March? I read an article along those lines as well. So those are some of the things that we intended to discuss today. And of course, importantly, what we're going to try and do and get Oscar to have a chat about is what our predictions are, where we see things heading for 2021. This is just our thoughts. And obviously you may have your own, and you're welcome to make comment with regard to those. So OD, Christmas, the New Year, did you have a bit of fun in between?
Yeah, mate, I did. I had a bit of downtime. We didn't actually go away anywhere. Obviously, more or less restricted to WA. And then, of course, we had that COVID situation influence Christmas holidaying plans anyway for people that were going interstate and obviously coming to WA. So, but no, I had a really, really good time. I felt a bit guilty, I think, because I did switch the real estate brain off and the work brain off. And as someone said, I was in a property management meeting just this morning, and I actually got lost for words. I couldn't get my thought process. I did. Yeah, I did. And I couldn't get my thought process back. And when I was talking with one of the guys that was in the meeting, I spoke to him directly after the meeting, and he mentioned the term holiday brain. And he also was suffering from holiday brain. I've never even heard that term before, but I certainly had a dose of it this morning because, I guess my head wasn't fully switched back on. But no, mate, had a really, really great Christmas with my family and extended family. as good as I could have hoped for, and but I'm very, very keen to see what 2021 brings, but also what we can bring to 2021, because it's not just going to happen by itself, and nothing really does. It will be about as good as what it is that you put into it. But from my end, and I'm sure from your end as well, I've got plenty to give. And I just can't wait to, I can't wait to have January and the first quarter of 2021 roll on. Really looking forward to it.
Yep, me too. I'm with you. And interesting, you know, you talk about the COVID situation. I was actually in a pool one hot day in Perth, and we were sitting there, and this fellow was there, and he's a construction worker from Melbourne. Has been dying to get over here, he and his wife, to see his family. He'd only just arrived, I think, 2 days before. And he's saying, I'm staying for a week and looking forward to it. And he was staying in a unit where we also have a unit. And so we're having a good chat. And he said, it's fabulous to get out. And he said, I can't believe how lucky, you know, what we've been through, although as a construction worker, he wasn't restricted. And lo and behold, next day, I wondered how he was going. So hopefully I'll see you again. You're going to be around for another week or so. Yep. And next thing we get this thing where they either had to fly back or whatever. So we don't realise how fortunate we are that these guys were so excited to see their family and their grandchildren. They were playing around the pool, which we were doing similar with our three of our grandchildren. And then all of a sudden that whole world changed for them again. And I think that's where it'll be interesting as to our conversation tonight. As to what we see and some of the things that we can't see because we just don't have a crystal ball, which it's a changing world just about every day, isn't it?
Yeah, mate, look, there's one hot topic, and it's followed me everywhere. We've only been back at work effectively 2 days, and it's followed me everywhere just over the last 2 days, and right up until about 5 o'clock or 5:15 this evening. Have you seen the headline? I think it was in the West Australian, and there's a rental property, I believe, in Beckenham that has received in excess of 800 inquiries for just a basic 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. Have you seen that floating around?
Yep.
Has anyone asked you about it? Because the number of people that have said, gee, wow, the rental market's starting to tighten up, and gee, it looks like we're heading for some sort of a rental crisis. We're there. Like, it's not something, and if we go back maybe 8, 9, 10 shows, we were talking about it, a good couple of months ago, and predicting it a little bit before that as well, because we're just following the trends. We're not rocket scientists, but we're following the trends. We can see supply coming down. We know that demand is going up. We came out of COVID better and stronger than we could have believed here in WA. So it's no new news in terms of, are we in a rental crisis? Absolutely. Is that going to get even harder come the end of that rental moratorium period or eviction moratorium period in about 2.5 months' time? Absolutely. It's going to get more challenging then. Rents are going to go up. It's going to be even harder to find a rental. There's not a massive supply of new rental properties coming onto the market. 800 inquiries for the 1-2-bedroom unit. That's a bit of sensationalism, I think, from the media. It's probably a fact. There probably was 800 inquiries. That particular unit, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit, really appealing to or aimed at the lower socio-economic division, I guess, of the population here in Perth. And that particular unit as well is also under what's known as the NRAS scheme, which is the National Rental Affordability Scheme. It's something that it's a joint federal and state government scheme, which is actually no longer a current scheme that has been promoted because the last government canned it, because I think they ran out of funding for it. But it was a scheme that ran for a period of about 10 years. So that means that all the NRAS credits that were in play actually continue, and they've got a life of probably another 7 or 8 years. But what that scheme did was it was meant to provide an incentive to landlords and investors to provide rental accommodation at 20% below the fair market rental value of the particular property. So in this case, we know that we've got a very, very tight rental market without the NRAS scheme, but this particular unit that achieved over 800 inquiries was advertised at a rent considered 20% below the fair market rent. it was a low rent property anyway. And when you take 20% off the current market rent, it's a rental of about $210 per week. That's the advertised price. So you can see why it generates 100 or several hundred inquiries. You can't just say, oh my God, 800 inquiries. We're not in that much of a crisis that we're going to get 800 inquiries on every property. But that said, that is one of the cheapest, most affordable units that actually sits below fair market rental value, which makes it even cheaper still. And of course, we know that there's practically no supply around, so we'd expect every man and his dog that would qualify for that sort of a property to be going after it. So like anything, the devil's always in the detail. But we're not expecting 800 inquiries for every single rental property. But yes, we are in a rental housing crisis, and I really can't see any change or shift in that over the course of 2021, other than it probably becoming harder for tenants for a few reasons.
Yep, and it's interesting with that, because I had a client in today and we were talking about some stuff and putting some stuff together for them, and they were engaging me for a separate job. And I made mention, I said, oh, how are you going with the investment? They said, I said, oh, you realise the market, really, the rental market, is that, they were quite dumbfounded that the rental market was at that crisis point. They were dumbfounded that the rental, they were sort of managing it themselves, but of course had no idea of what was going on, and when I say no idea, that's probably the wrong terminology, probably not aware of what was going on and not conscious of the fact of the demand that has been happening. And certainly we've experienced it firsthand, and you and I have discussed it many a time, both in a personal sense, but also what's going on there, that, it's a very, very, well, it's an intriguing market, and it's also interesting as to what will occur. And as I pointed out earlier on, there's the housing stock, come the end of the moratorium in March, where are we going to be at? What's going to happen then? Huge. And there's still people trying to get back home. When I say back home from international, where are they going to live? Because suddenly their tenants are already in their home.
Yeah, and even this afternoon I came across another person that has just got a job as a property manager, and she's just relocated from Queensland because her husband works FIFO and in the mining sector in the state's Midwest, and he was actually doing FIFO from Queensland, which meant that not only did she not get to see him on weekends, she didn't get to see him for months at a time. And they've got a little boy who I think is 6 years old as well. So they decided that life is going to be in WA. So they picked up life and completely relocated their family to WA. So she needed to find work. The little boy's now in school, and so at least they get to see the man of the house, the husband and the dad on the weekend. But so there's migration. It's not just people that are trying to come home, it's people that are trying to make WA their home as well. So but in terms of where is the rental market going to go in the next few months, there's no question that there's going to be further rental increases than what we've already seen in the last 6 months. It absolutely has to happen, and that is largely because of this moratorium that we've had on evictions. Part of that moratorium has been a cap on rental increases, effectively saying that there can't be any rental increases for tenants that are in existing properties. And so for all the new properties that have been leasing, and we know that there's been around about 1,000 properties leasing every week here in Perth, they can be at market rent, and the rent can, the tenants really can fight it out amongst themselves. But for over the last 12 months and since COVID, since that moratorium was introduced, there hasn't been any rent increases allowed for tenants that were in existing rentals. And that makes up probably the dominant supply of, or the dominant portion of the existing rental market. So there's no question that come the end of March, when rents are now allowed to go up, rents absolutely will go up. It's just about by how much. And then it comes down to, well, what about the affordability of those tenants to pay that increased rent?
Yep. And I think that's
it just gets more and more challenging.
Without doubt, and I think that, you know, there's also been some articles with regard to homeless people and people, you know, the government housing and things of that nature. So it's not just pressure on the private sector; it's the pressure that's happening on the state housing sector, the public, you know, the government housing sector. So that's just a flow on. And I know just the inquiries we're having, there's no doubt these people, some people are desperate and pleading. But, you know, unfortunately, you've also got to consider the fact is that you've got to be humane, but at the same time, you can't be. I think that's a challenge in itself as well.
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that creates the crisis or makes the crisis deeper than what it needs to be is the fact that there isn't any solution that is just around the corner or anything that we're aware of. If we take our minds back to February and March last year, the COVID was a pandemic. It absolutely was a crisis. And that was something that we're just going to have to live with and try and contain until such time as a vaccine is available. Now, we've gone 9-10 months down the track, and you know, we've made some amazing, or worldwide, there's been some amazing progress towards a vaccine, and we're now seeing millions of doses rolling out around the world. So that, by and large, is a very good solution for the COVID crisis that we've got. Our rental crisis, in terms of, there's probably only one thing that I can think of and that I know of that will happen over the course of this year that is going to try and solve or to lessen the effect of the rental crisis that we've got. And the only thing that I can think of is obviously the government stimulated the construction sector in terms of the government grants for building. And so we did see a massive spike in land sales in the mid part of 2020, in the mid part of last year. And that was both through the Perth metropolitan area, but it was also through the regional area as well. Also the regional areas of WA. So when that amount of housing actually comes to fruition, when those properties are built, and that I suspect is going to be around about the middle of this year through to the end of this year. So in the second half of this year, that's when we actually might see an increase in the supply of rental properties, and it might actually lessen the pressure that we've got on the rental market. So I can say, hand on heart, for the next 6 months, I think it gets harder. It doesn't get easier. It gets harder before it gets easier. And maybe in the second 6 months of the year, that level of, with all those new houses that have been built, given that we know migration hasn't been huge, largely because of COVID, maybe we'll actually see a lot more of those properties where people move out of. What are you pointing at?
Look what I got.
What?
Look,
That's fantastic. Look what I've got.
In there.
Anyway, so where I think there could be a bit of an easing of the pressure on the rental market is in the second half of the year, when all those new properties are actually built. People that have built them will either move into them themselves or will hopefully look to rent them out, and that's going to increase the rental supply and take some of the pressure off the market. And the other option for that, obviously, is that they do neither. They don't rent them out at all, and they just look to sell them and move into their new properties. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But other than that, what really creates a crisis bigger than one with a solution is one without a solution. And right now, I just don't think that there is a solution at our fingertips where we can see this rental market pressure getting better.
Yep. The other, I don't want to go on with this all night, but the other thing that which comes into our buying factor as well is, cheers, Happy New Year, is the, I'm a healthy man, water and ice, mate. The other factor that comes into it, of course, is the stats that I provided, that survey they did. I think it was November when we did the show. I think Dino Stonehouse was on at the time, and we had those stats where there was something like 1 million people going to sell. They did this survey of 1 million people that were entertaining selling in the East Coast. in 2021. And of course, there was some 300,000 of that million were overseas investors. Of course, a large, we're talking about East Coast, but where I'm coming from is that other than those looking for upgrading and downgrading their homes, there was a large percentage of going, we are moving to WA. We are looking to move to WA because of lifestyle, because we're not going to have this. That COVID had an impact on their thinking. So that's going to have another impact that we don't perhaps consider, other than what's already happening. You know, you talk about FIFO workers, but these are people who are going, no, we're looking for a change of lifestyle. We're looking, WA seems a better option for us. Let's go there. We'll wait and see. Time will tell. But that's just another impact on those people I'd suggest who are selling. See WA as affordable when you consider what the prices are on the East Coast. But there's probably going to be some of those that are going to have an impact on the rental market as well.
Yeah, mate. I think I just had a thought that it might be interesting, just maybe for our own benefit, and anyone that might choose to watch this. Oh, I think I've lost you, mate. You've disappeared. But I'll just continue and wait for you to come back. You've completely gone off screen. But I think maybe for our own benefit, it'd be interesting to actually review some of the shows that we did over the course of 2020. And just, wherever it is we've made some sort of a prediction or we've made some observation as to the market, where the market is currently at, and where we think it's going to go. Because I'm not blowing our trumpet, because we're not trumpet blowers. There are a number of things that we've mentioned just over the second half of last year, and whether it be COVID, whether it be the rental crisis itself, because up until probably August or September, there was no talk of a rental crisis. It was just a busy market, and we were point blank saying this is going into crisis because there's no supply. There's not going to be any positive change in supply. It's only going to get tighter, and it's going to be difficult for people looking to rent a house. Excuse me. It's going to be good for the landlords, but excuse me. It's going to be good for the landlords, but for the people renting, it's not going to be that great. So I'd just like to be able to revisit a couple of those points that we made, and also at this point in time when we are talking about the future predictions, I'd love to maybe make a note of what these predictions are and review them again. Maybe when we get to March or April, or maybe when we get to you're back.
What happened? Our power went out.
No, I don't.
Our power went out.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, I just kept on talking, mate. I
know you did a very good job because I could hear you.
What a classic.
Welcome to 2021. And I'm madly going, what's going on? And Judy just said the power, the TV and everything. But for some reason, I've got you back on, so I don't know what's happened. Here we go. But you've obviously done a very good job.
So all I was basically saying is not wanting to blow our own trumpet, but I'd love to be able to grab a couple of snippets from previous shows, like through the middle of last year and everything, where we made some representations, some thoughts as to this is where we think it's going. Obviously, the ones that we got right, and maybe it might even be good for the ones that we didn't get right. And during our current period show, just to play a couple of those things and just say, look, this is what we said on the 8th of August, and this is what we said on the 19th of May. And look, that's where we've gone, because like you've said before, we've got I think we've got more right than we've got wrong. And even right now, I'd love to be able to make a note of the different predictions that we're making, and then in 3 months' time or in 6 months' time, actually replay part of what we're saying right now and work out whether we're on the money or not.
And which leads me into the next point, and we made that as our title for our show tonight. Predictions. What are your thoughts with regard to 2021, other than the rental market, which we've already discussed?
Yeah, well, then there's the sales market. If we're talking rental, we're talking sales as well. It's been a long time where we've seen both the rental market and the sales market be in such strong positions, and power ahead the way that they are, where supply, either in sales or rentals, is super, super low, and the demand for both buying properties and for renting properties is as high as what it is. You mentioned a stat before that in terms of November, and the fastest period for selling houses was November last year, and the last time we saw any level of activity or speed of activity was back in 2006. So if we go back to 2006, now 14 odd years ago, that was about 1.5 to 2 years before the global financial crisis, which we didn't know was happening at the time. But I do remember back in those mid-2000s areas, our world, our real estate market was absolutely bulletproof, and we waited and waited and waited for something to change because we knew that it couldn't go on forever, and it did. It did change by way of the global financial crisis, and it didn't only change for us, it obviously changed for the rest of the world as well. But this time's different. This time's different because the whole world is going through COVID, and the whole world is dealing with COVID differently as well. And there's two C words in play, and one is COVID. COVID can do exactly to our economy and therefore real estate market what it is doing to parts of the US and obviously parts of the UK as well. It absolutely can do that. Right now we're in a lucky country, but we have seen just in the last fortnight that can turn on a dime very, very quickly. So right now, we just have to ride the wave with that. But the other thing that we have discussed over the last month is the impact on trade relations with China and the impact of that in our WA economy. I really believe that is going to have more of an impact on our WA economy. And I know there's a few economists talking about it. There's a few real estate commentators talking about it as well. But I think the only time we're going to see the actual effect on our trade relations with China is not going to be until the horse is bolted. So I reckon the very end of this year at best, before we actually know what damage, if any, and I think it's fair to say there has been some damage to the trade relations with China, whether it be wine or beef or barley, coal or anything, that's going to be reflected in our GDP. But we're not going to know till the horse is already bolted. So all we can all hope for is that the government does its bit to improve the trade relationship with China, because our economy at this minute relies so heavily on that.
I still think it's when we talk about predictions, and I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to work that out, but it's obviously still, the marketplace is still there for the investors. And it was interesting to see, normally, and looking at some of the stats that I had a brief look at, normally the December period is a little quieter. Obviously, people are on holidays, people are focused on Christmas, people are focused on going away. All of a sudden, those things didn't exist in 2020 for all the reasons we're well aware of and we've repeated. So suddenly the market was a lot different, and certainly it was proactive. And the inquiries that I had, and I have got a couple of clients who've engaged me to assist them and observing some of the things that are going on with property in the metro area, for example. And they were contacting me and said, TV, we were trying to get hold of this property and it was gone by the time we rang up. They'd had buyers, they'd already had offers in, and the offers had been accepted. So it's a situation where it's very, very difficult. And I've got a couple of people that I'm providing some support with who are trying to identify property in the Perth metro area for investment purposes, and they are struggling. They're struggling because they just can't get there quick enough. And one's on the East Coast, one's in the country, and they're going, my God, how do we get hold of this? How does this happen? And so what are your thoughts in situations like that for people that are perhaps listing in that same predicament?
FOMO, sorry, people that are listing?
No. People that are in a similar situation who are want to get into the market, want to get, we've got a very proactive market. And as I said, I've got a client on the East Coast, client in the country, both looking for properties in the Perth metro area. And as quick as they pick the phone up, they find a property on realestate.com or whatever it may be, it's gone. Offers already been put in there and gone.
Yeah. So my advice would be, firstly, stay realistic. You've got to be realistic because this market has done just an amazing turnaround since COVID. So that hasn't even been 12 months, and no wild dreamer would have predicted the market that we've got now. So can COVID turn it back the other way? Absolutely, it can. We hope that it doesn't, but so it can change very, very quickly, and COVID has the power to do that. So stay stay grounded, stay realistic, and stay logical. That said, um, make sure you get what it is that you're after. And like anything in investment, a long term hold is more likely to get you the returns that you're after and achieve the objective that you're after than trying something for just a quick hold and flip. So stay grounded, but in particular, have someone, and particularly if you're in the eastern states, have someone locally here in WA that is there to bat on your side. Someone that you can retain, someone that does this for a living, that has got their finger on the pulse, that is well connected, obviously experienced and knowledgeable as well, but might be able to move on these things a bit quicker than you can, just because they've been in the industry and they're connected. But you got to be very careful with the person that you choose as well. Independence is really, really important. They need to be engaged by you and working for you, because otherwise, ultimately, if someone else is paying them the fee or the money, ultimately they're actually working for someone else. So make sure you know where you stand. The fear of missing out is it's not a pie in the sky thing. It absolutely exists.
Yep.
And so so you do need to move quickly, but don't be silly. Don't overcommit. Don't pay way over the odds.
Yes.
But
Yes.
you do need to put a good foot forward. I've got a friend of mine who sold their house towards the end of last year, and they can't wait to buy their new house. But I caught up with him just over the Christmas period, and he just said, "Mate, I'm happy to just sit on my hands for 6 months." Like, the market is way too crazy for him out there, that he feels that him and his family, but more likely he will go beyond that point of making an informed decision and get carried away with this marketplace, which he thinks he might regret. So therefore, he's happy to just sit tight for 6 months. He's living at the mother-in-law's house. All the
Ah,
cooking's done for him, and yeah. And he said it's not bad. He said he's got the best chef in Sardinia or wherever he is. He's got the best chef. The living conditions aren't bad at all. He's saving a bucket load of money because they're not paying a mortgage or any rent or anything anywhere else. And he's watching what might be the madness that is going on in the real estate market. He's just made the decision that he doesn't actually want to be part of that. He'll stay watching what's going on, but he's not going to allow himself to get in there and pay over the top. So,
yep.
and I think that's actually a really good outlook. It's not for everyone, but I think that's a really balanced way of looking at things.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm still believe there's opportunity. I still think there's opportunity. I don't think, it's not like you're going to buy toilet rolls in the supermarket and they're all going to sell out tomorrow. Property will exist, the property will be there. It's just a case of, looking at the opportunity and identifying, as you said, in a very wise way. Just, I think probably one of the words is patience. Be patient. Accept the fact that it is, there is a bit of enthusiasm going around at the moment, remembering there's a lot of people around who would normally perhaps go away overseas and whatever, and suddenly saying, well, that's probably not going to happen. And looking at where do I read? And what was the story? Someone had decided I know, they were going away, they had a wedding plan, going overseas, doing a wedding overseas, etc., and they turn around, that's not going to happen. They end up buying a property. They say, you know what, it was probably a good move. Because a wedding is all well and good, but all this money that they're going to spend on a wedding, they end up buying themselves a nice home and got themselves a home earlier than they were planning. And they said, we got the money that we may have regretted later on. So the wedding was great, but what did it achieve? Not a lot.
Yeah. And that also, it comes back to your objective, I guess, or your motivations as well.
Yep.
So that all said, excuse me, and dependent upon your objective, like why are you actually making the move in terms of buying the next property, because sometimes it might be purely for investment. Sometimes it might be because that's going to be the family home for the next 10 years. Sometimes it might be the retirement home where you're going to see out the last 20 years of your life or whatever. So you've got to really be focused on, well, why is it that you're actually doing it? So even though we're saying make sure that you get yourself educated, that you've got someone batting in your corner, having someone independent that's not going to get all caught up in the emotion of actually buying the property and you can benefit from their experience, and they can give you some very balanced advice as to what they think you should be doing, but using their property knowledge as well. But that all said, come the time that you find the property that you're after, don't mess around. This is not the market to just offer, I don't know, 20 grand below the asking price, and it's one of those see how you go offers. And also, if you know you could pay an extra 5 grand or an extra 8 grand, you might not get an option 2 or a second chance or a third chance with it. So if you've got the money and have got the ability to pay what you think the property is worth, don't mess around with it on your first offer. Go in, basically with your best foot forward, because you might not get that second or third chance. And we're literally seeing that day in, day out. So if you find the property that you're after, if it ticks the boxes, go in with your gun loaded and give it your best crack. If you don't get it, as Tony said before, there'll be other properties around, but don't miss out on the property just because you thought it's a buyer's market, because it absolutely is not a buyer's market. We just don't have that right now.
No, dead right. And there's been situations I know of where we've seen properties for clients where they've, I think, were fortunate to do what they did, but there were offers above the asking price, and that's already happening. So that's so if you think you're going to put an offer in and go, well, what used to be 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, that's well and surely gone out the window. And
hey, look, TV, just even very quickly, I haven't spent too much time going through stats, and I don't think we need to, because I think everyone gets a pretty good idea as to where the market's at. That said, we know that at the end, not at the end of last year, but at the end of 2019, our real estate market really did start to finish off the year very strongly, maybe even the last 6 months of 2019. And then at the start of 2020, January was great, February was awesome, and then COVID happened. So, it got stopped. But we were finishing off the 2019 year very, very well. So when I go and have a look at this time 12 months ago, when the market started to really pick up, in terms of sales properties, there were 13,300 listings available. As at today, in terms of the supply, so 12 months later, there's just a touch over 9,000 properties available through the Perth metropolitan area. So that is a good 40% drop compared to where we were at this time 12 months ago. And 12 months ago, we started to go into a bit of an upswing, into a much stronger market. COVID came along and caused us a major speed bump, but even now, 12 months on, our supply there is probably 40% down on where it was 12 months ago. And 12 months ago, we started to get into tight territory. So that just should give you a bit of an indication that there's not a lot of stock around at the moment. But if you find the property that's for you, don't mess around.
Hey, Dino Stonehouse has just touched the base and said hello.
Dino!
Yo, buddy, Happy New Year to you. And well, I've got to catch up with him for a cold ale when I get back, because I came up to Geraldton yesterday. Did you know that? I zipped up to Geraldton. And
I knew that you did that, and you fought a few fires along the way. You did your thing for the volunteer fire brigade.
I did, but I went to see my dear mum, which is one of those things. But she was asleep when I arrived this arvo. My wife and I got there to see her, and she was sound asleep. And I suppose because she just turned 91 a few days after Christmas, so we raced up here to see her, and she was asleep. She was having a little rest, the old little love. But talking about Dino, he just made the comment with regard to what we're saying is that you need to ensure that you buy the wrong property, and the cost of change is huge. So, if it's getting back to what you were saying before, is be a little bit smart, and like that mate of yours who's being patient. Don't just do it because you think you must, because everyone else is.
Yeah.
Identify what it is you're looking for, identify where it is you're looking for, identify what your affordability is, and you go and see a finance broker like One Dean Stonehouse or Jordan Ralph or someone of that nature. I mention those names because they've been fabulous in giving us their time and being guests on our show. We've got no financial connections with them, but just mates. But yeah, good point. You just need to be make sure you get it right, because if it's not right, the cost to change is can be pretty hectic.
Yeah, Matt, I'm not sure if that's your planned segue into that other question that we had so far as a investment property and planned subdivision, but was that
It
where
is.
you were going with that? It
That's where I'm
is?
going.
Well, sorry, mate, I've stolen your thunder. Pretend I never said that.
No, I'm good. So the question we got a question sent to us, which we really encourage people to do this. It's really, if you don't want to do something live, but the question was from Paul, and he came back and said, "Hi guys, thinking of going into partnership and buying a property rated R40, in the metro area with a view to developing. There is an existing house on the block that needs to demolish, so there'll be a demolition job required. And then what his plan is to build 3 new properties on the block. What he would like to do is for us guys to discuss some of the pointers, and not only the good points, but some of the pitfalls that could apply in such a situation." So there you go. You're the expert. Speak, O mighty one.
Well, no, I'm not the expert,
No,
but
I know.
I've had a bit of experience in this type of stuff over my time, and really going into my property valuation neck of the woods, because we do this kind of work and we look at feasibilities for clients and try and help them and provide them a qualified or licensed level of advice. That said, what I'm about to say is not that. I'm not providing any licensed or qualified advice for any one situation. I'm making general comments, but in relation to the question. So, what are the pros and cons? The pros, obviously, the main reason why someone would go in and buy a subdivisible block and knock over the house and build 3 units, most of the time it is for property development and investment purposes. And the big plus about that is there's some very good money in it. You can make some really good money in something like a duplex development, a triplex, or a quadruplex. You can make some really, really good money in it if it's done right. Now, the problem, I guess, with this, and I make that comment unreservedly, you can make some really good money if you get the right advice and if this is done right. There are a number of ways, though, that it can go wrong. And obviously, I'd probably want to spend a lot more time talking about the cons of doing such an exercise as opposed to the pros. But look, it's a very detailed thing, mate, and we could have a very long extended show as to all the different things you need to consider. But number one, the pro is you can make some good money. The second thing is that right now we've got a fantastic market to make sure that if you buy the property, number one, you're effectively buying land, because that's what you're going to put into the development. If the house needs to be demolished, well, that's actually going to be a cost. It effectively forms part of your land acquisition cost. So that bit's quite straightforward. But all the risks associated with producing a development that ultimately is going to make your development profitable, right now we've actually got a very good market for that. So long as you don't pay too much for the land, and let's just say it's going to take you 12 months or something like that to complete the development, maybe 12 to 18 months to do the development. If our market keeps going the way that it does and prices keep going up, chances are you'll make even more money than what you thought. Now, again, that's a very general statement, but that's all the blue sky stuff. That's all the stuff that if it all goes to plan, and if our market continues, and if you do well at estimating the building costs and also what you're going to sell these properties for, that's all well and good. But here's some of the risks that you can have with these developments. Firstly, an R40 site in the city of Stirling, I think it was, TV that you said. An R40 site, I think, generally requires an average lot size of 220 square metres of land, which means that you'd need a minimum lot size, parent lot size of 660 square metres in order to satisfy the average of 220 square metres per lot. But it's not as simple as that as to whether or not you can in fact put the 3 villas or townhouses there that you'd like, because often the council will have certain requirements to do with street frontages, and the zoning that allows the density that you're looking for typically will have more requirements other than the average lot size. So you need to make sure that what you intend to redevelop the site with, you absolutely can do that. So make sure you get some advice so that you can build what you're looking to build. Because if you can't actually build what you're looking to build, that's going to impact on what you can sell the end product for, and that might make your development profitable or not profitable. So that bit's really, really important. The demolition of the existing house, if that in fact is what needs to happen, then the demolition of the house obviously is going to be a cost. That might be 10 grand, it might be 20 grand. So get some advice as to how much is it going to cost you to demolish and remove all the debris from the site. When it comes time to demolition, things like asbestos, you've got to look at because the cost of removal of asbestos, that can also be quite high, and that can impact on the cost of demolition. So you've got to, dot the I's and cross the T's with that. In terms of the development itself, you've got to make sure, firstly, that what you're looking to develop is going to be saleable, and there's going to be a market that is going to be after that. You need to get a pretty good idea as to what you're going to be able to sell those properties for in today's market. If you're conservative, you might be, might put a gross realization of 5 or 10% below what you can sell it for in the current market. And hopefully, if our market continues, you might actually earn more money than your current day prediction. There's so many different costs with regard to subdividing a site. You've got to have to pay a town planner to do some planning work, surveyor to actually do surveying of the site. There's going to be costs of fencing. You've got to provide services like all the electricity and the water services and gas services to each of the individual lots. So that needs to be taken into account. You're going to have to probably have a strata plan drawn up, which would be a surveyor's cost, and then titles. You're going to have titles issued for each property as well. Demolition costs we've spoken about. Building costs are a really, really big one as well. Very often do you see people go into either these developments or building their own house, and what they thought they were going to spend on the build on day one is far different from what it actually ends up being. And typically they don't end up spending less. Typically they end up spending more. Now that again can have an impact on the profitability of the development. So you need to get a very good idea up front as to what's going to be your actual building cost, because if that increases, if you understate that by 10% or 15%, which is not unheard of at all, then that will impact on your profitability on the development. Sometimes I've actually seen it make the development not profitable anymore, which means you never would have started. So make sure you've got an idea of your building costs, and you really do need to allow some contingencies in there as well. And by contingencies, I mean things that you didn't predict would go wrong, costs that you didn't predict would either be costs at all or you got the costs wrong. You need to have some contingencies and basically risk factors in there, because if you don't, I promise you that they'll rear their heads later on. And overall, if you're doing this for the purposes of making money, you've got to make sure as well that it is financially feasible, that it actually makes sense for you to make money in doing the development. Because I've come across many people that think it's a good idea to make the money of doing a duplex or a triplex or carve off the back block and then develop and sell that. And all these are great ideas when it works. But I've seen people that either get out of it with making no money at all because the costs ended up being greater than what they thought, or they didn't actually sell the property for as much as what they thought. Either they got the value wrong or the market changed. But then I've also seen people that have lost money on these sorts of developments as well. So again, it's great when it works, and we've got a very good market at the moment that would suggest that it would work, so long as you buy the land at the right price, and you are very accurate with your costs in terms of what you predict those are going to be. And yeah, the upside on a development like that, I think, could be very healthy in the current market.
Is there a person is there a professional person in the marketplace that looks after that sort of thing, particularly if you're a new kid on the block with such a plan?
Yeah, it just depends, TB, on to what level of detail you want to go into. So, I mean, I'm a licensed valuer, so and this is not stuff that I do every day in terms of the feasibilities, but we do provide advice to mum and dad investors, and we do provide advice to lenders as well when they look at financing these types of developments. So we need to go through exactly the same process as if we were the ones who owned the land. But there are, I mean, there's a number of independent town planning consultants. There are different businesses that specifically do project management and this sort of a feasibility analysis. And I think you'll find a lot of the builders, the generic builders, things like builders like Summit Homes, WA Building Company, like lots of the builders that would build just your everyday family home. Most of them have these arms that actually assist you to develop a block such as what it is that you've described here. So, yep, there's definitely these sorts of services available. And from my point of view, especially if you're not experienced with it, I think you would be mad to not engage some independent, obviously experienced help. Because yes, it's going to be an initial cost. There is going to be some cost for that, but I'd rather, pay that money, and that means that my development will be a little bit less profitable than winging it, basically, and hoping that it comes together, because the downside of that could be far, far greater than the small amount of money you'd pay to a useful, reputable contractor or consultant.
And we've got some great people around us, and our Dino, the Stone Man, has come back. Up front, he's saying, decide if you are building to sell or build and hold. Get financial and legal advice around the correct ownership structure before doing any offer. And what he's referring to is the fact that Paul, who asked the question, is considering a partner. So, as Dino's saying, get the other thing beyond the building side of it is get financial and legal advice around the correct ownership structure before doing any offer. And if holding any of the completed lots, so if you intend to sell, say, one and keep one each, because they're planning on building three, then set an agreement with your partners how the property will be dealt with if one of the owners needs to sell at some state in the future, which is a very, very valid point.
Yeah, look, really, really good advice, Dean. And I didn't really touch on. I just sort of got straight into the real estate development side of it. But yeah, so far as the ownership, and if there's going to be a change of ownership, because sometimes the intentions that you set out with, things change, life changes, people change, people's financial situations change as well. So there's basically having a structure for the what if any of those things actually happen. So it's a really good.
The other thing that Dino pointed out was, and being a finance broker and obviously in touch with this sort of thing, developing and building of 4 or more homes is usually treated by most lenders as a development project and is priced at commercial rates, not home loan rates. So on the basis of building 3, you would be, I'm guessing from that, then what Dino's saying is you'd come under the category of home loan rates. But if you change and you will, if someone else is listing and looking at doing something similar, be aware that if you build 4 or more, then when it comes to the banking situation, when it comes to lenders, you will be at commercial rates, not home loan rates, which is a big difference.
Yeah, it is. In terms of, it's a big difference in terms of the interest rates. It's a difference in terms of the equity contributions and everything as well. So that Dean's clearly the expert on that. But yeah, it does change the ball game as well. The other thing as well that's worth considering, that with whenever it is that you've got a property that's already got an established house on it, it's not always the best option. And maybe in this case it is, but it's not always the best option to knock the house over. sometimes if the house itself can be retained, possibly renovated, or it might be worthwhile keeping it, and that should be part of your financial feasibility process as well. So don't automatically think that you could just knock over the house, because in many cases it might be a bit of a no, not a handbrake, but it ultimately is a cost if you need to demolish it, but it sometimes can be an asset. So make sure you get some good independent advice, just confirming what it is you think so far as the existing dwelling on the property.
Yep. Hey, we're pretty much getting near the end of, I had an article that I will follow up, because I've just looked at the time. I can't believe we just zipped through so quickly. But I found an article over the break with about 20 things that may become extinct in the next 20 years. So I'll keep that one for next week.
Okay.
And I would be really interested to know from our people that may be watching or listening, whatever the case would be, if they can think of something that they think may not survive the next 20 years. Remembering it was only 20 years ago the internet came into our world.
Mate, I reckon that anyone who's watching this is probably hearing you talking about what's going to be extinct in the next 20 years, and they might be looking square at the two little grey-haired gentlemen on the screen, sitting there going, well, I put my money on you two not being around.
Well, maybe the one on the left before the one on the right, perhaps. Who knows? I hope I'm going, yes. All right, Oscar. Hey, the question that I was going to make mention of just very quickly is when you said that, extinction, what was it? I want to make mention. We are progressing with podcast. So I will be back in Perth later on in the week and follow that through. But we're ticking away with that little box, and we hope to get something happening sooner rather than later. But I've got a friend who's been very, very generous and very kind to us, and that is working. But I didn't realise how difficult things can be with a simple podcast, because you've got to do things with Apple and you've got to do things with Spotify and someone else may be listening. It's easy, but I don't know enough to be able to. So I'm relying on a friend who's offered to provide his help. And
so we're not going to get to touch on the obviously we've got bushfires going on around the state. So we're not really going to get the chance to get into that, are we?
No, but what I do, I was going to make mention about that as well, the impact it has to property, not just in the city, but the impact, the bushfires this time of the year. But what I will say is that certainly from you and I and people here, if you are impacted in those sort of things, we wish you the very, very best. We know this time last year what was happening on the East Coast, and it's the nature of our country. We talk about COVID and everything, but we have this bushfire thing that happens, and with the weather we've had, those winds yesterday, this way. I don't know what it was like in Perth, but wow, that easterly was just roaring.
Yeah, so, I think there's many parts of the state that are battling these bushfires. So I think there's Perth, there's in the Gingin, Lancelin area. There's even up your way as well. Mate, I don't know if you know, the reason your power went out is I think just in Wonthella there's quite a large bushfire happening in Wonthella, probably. Not too well. You're in Wandina, but in Wonthella, bordered by the Floors Road, Place Road, the highway, and 8th Street or something. So
really,
fire. Yeah.
Well, that's probably where the old tip used to be.
Don't know, but when we jump off this, mate, why don't you research it?
That might impact my golf course.
Well, it might impact your golf course, but I was more so thinking about number one, people's lives, and number two, the reason why the power might have gone out. So
yeah. But it is something that I'm not joking about it. I mean, I've seen it even as a young fella, but it not only has an impact on homes and lives, but also stock and animals, and so it goes. And we saw this the other day, and she said, look, it's only a house. But the kids were upset because they lost their cat, So it's those things that, are really important, and they do impact on people's lives. So our thoughts go out and also those that are volunteering to help. So we wish everybody well. And it's something I spoke to Justin Collins the other day, and we're trying to get Justin, who does insurance with Aviso, and he's just working out his timetable so we can get him on board and talk about risk management. And certainly bushfires is one of those things we could discuss with him. Hey, question, quickly before we wind up. If you were given a choice to be able to fly invisible, what would it be?
Sorry, I mean, you cut out. If I was given a choice, what?
If you were given a choice to fly, to be able to fly, right, or to turn invisible, which one would you choose?
Fly.
Yeah, me
Definitely
too.
Fly. Man, me as a youngster, I was Superman whenever I could be Superman, mate. And so I would love to be able to fly. Invisible, that just sounds a little bit too devious for me.
Yeah, well, it could be. You could have some fun turning invisible, but yeah, no, I remember as a young lad jumping off the back shed in the back of our house. We had a big quarter-acre block, and we had this shed, and I can remember putting on a sheet over the back and thinking that I could jump off there and just take off, but it didn't happen.
No, and I think you tried that again in November, or not last year, but in November 2019.
Yeah, 2019, I did. It didn't work. I ended up with a lot of broken parts of my body. Hey, listen, we've got to go, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure once again. It's been to all our people out there. I hope you've enjoyed what we're doing. Look, we're going to try and get as many guests on as we can this year. Plenty of varied topics. We don't want to bang on week in and week out with the same stuff. So if you've got any ideas or any thoughts, we would welcome you to send us a message. You can access us through our social media, through a Facebook page. We've got a Property Avenue WA Facebook page. We've got a Champion Bay Settlements Facebook page in which these two stream. And we've got a Property Avenue WA YouTube channel. And shortly we hope to have a Property Avenue podcast happening. So plenty of avenues for you to contact us. And if we can help you, then we would be more than happy, because that's what we're about. It's not about selling anything. It's just providing, giving information, assisting you with things about property in WA. Thanks a million, mate. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. And I will quickly find our little promo. Did you like it? Did you have a look at it?
Loved it, mate. It was so good. I can't wait to see it again.
You're such a fibber. Bye.